Well, good afternoon and welcome to you all. As I'm recording this, today is the second day of Lent. Many of you were at our Ash Wednesday service last night at St. Luke's, and so you know that we have begun a new season of the church year, the season of Lent. And so I wanted to make this little video for you today, and we're going to send this along. I'm going to post it on YouTube, and then I'll link this to our to an email for you. Because with the change of season, just like we change the colors in the worship space seasonally, when you come into worship on Sunday, you'll notice that the white is gone, the white paraments, the white antipendia, the things that hang from the pulpit and the lectern, those are antipendia. They'll be gone. The white frontal on the communion table will be gone, and those will have been replaced by purple. We adorn the worship space in purple for Lent, just as we do for Advent. And color purple in the church is a color for penitential seasons. And it's also the color for, as we often say to the children, we're waiting for something. In Advent, we see that purple and we know we're waiting for something. We're waiting for Christmas. And during Lent, we come in and we see that purple. We know we're waiting for something. We're waiting for Easter. And just like we change the colors in the worship space seasonally, so we should change out the other parts of worship, the responses, etc., seasonally, so that the tone color of the service itself, and not just the color of the paraments, the color of the frontal on the communion table or the antipendia on the pulpit and lectern, not just those aren't the only colors that change. The tone color of the service itself changes. Now, having said that, the elements of the liturgy remain the same and in the same sequence. The sequence per the service for the Lord's Day in the Book of Common Worship and also in the front cover of your hymnal is gathering, word, Eucharist, and sending. And within each of those sections, the sequence of elements remains the same. They'll be exactly as they are in the Book of Common Worship and in the front of your hymnal. Only some of the specific texts of the elements are changed seasonally. Or sometimes the same texts are used, but the musical settings of those texts will change seasonally. So for the season of Lent, for example, the opening salutation, typically during ordinary time, we have been using verses from Psalm 118. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. On Sunday, you will notice that we have an opening salutation that is specific for the season of Lent, just as we used a salutation specific for the season of Advent during Advent. So the element is the same, it's in the same place, but the text of that element is different because of the difference of season that we are now in. As of yesterday, Ash Wednesday, we're in a new season. We're in the season of Lent. Once Eastertide arrives, we will use the traditional opening salutation for Eastertide, which is one that goes back centuries and is used both in the West and the East. And you probably know what that is. But we're not going to say it right now because it's Lent. Another example, after the prayer of confession in the liturgy, we will still sing the Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy, But then after the declaration of forgiveness, also known as the absolution, we'll sing the chorus, "We are forgiven," instead of a Gloria, just like we did during Advent. We sang "We are forgiven" during Advent because we don't want to sing the Gloria during Advent. We want to hold that and sing the Gloria in Excelsis uh, starting on Christmas Eve and sing that during Christmas tide. And so we're going to hold off on the Gloria during Lent too, just like we hold off on of course, on Alleluia during Lent as well. So during Christmas tide and Easter tide, we sing a setting of the Gloria in Excelsis, which is known as the Greater Doxology. And during ordinary time, we sing a setting of the Gloria Patri, which is also known as the Minor or the Lesser Doxology. And during those festive seasons, when we sing the Gloria in Excelsis, during Christmastide and during Eastertide, we omit the singing of the Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy, because it is a festive season. So we go from prayer confession to the absolution to the singing of the Gloria in Excelsis. For Lent, we'll have the prayer of confession. We'll sing the Kyrie eleison, Lord have mercy, because it's a penitential season. And then we'll sing, instead of singing a doxology, whether the greater doxology, the Gloria in Excelsis, or the lesser doxology, the Gloria Patri, we'll instead sing the chorus, "We are forgiven." Another example, at the presentation of the offering, we will sing the doxology, "Praise God from whom all blessings flow," to the psalm tune Old Hundredth for the season of Lent, which is what we've been doing for ordinary time. Last Sunday, though, on the Feast of the Transfiguration, we sang that text, "Praise God from whom all blessings flow," to the tune "Lasst uns erfreuen," which is the one with all the Alleluias in it. But since we bury the Alleluia during Lent, we're going to sing it to Old Hundredth for the Sundays in Lent, and we'll bring back the Lasst uns erfreuen tune, the one with the Alleluias in it, for Eastertide. You may remember that during Christmastide, at the presentation of the offering, we sang the last stanza of the hymn, "What Child Is This?" The one that begins, "So bring him incense, gold, and myrrh." We sang that instead of a doxology. And there are other responses that we could sing at that moment, at the presentation of the offering, such as, "All things come of thee, O Lord." And perhaps we'll work those into the rotation in the future. But just bear in mind, first of all, there's nothing in the Bible that says you have to sing "Praise God from whom all blessings flow" at the presentation of the offerings, or that you have to sing it to any one specific tune, even if you do sing it. But also, while a lot of people refer to that text, "Praise God from whom all blessings flow," as quote unquote the doxology, it's merely a doxology. It's one that was written in the 18th century by a man named Thomas Ken, who at the time was the Bishop of Bath and Wells. And he wrote two hymns. He wrote a morning hymn and an evening hymn, and they both ended with that same stanza, "Praise God from whom all blessings flow." And churches since then have just extracted that final stanza from those two hymns and have used it as a doxology. As we said, the hymn that is known as the Greater Doxology is the Gloria in Excelsis, which its use dates back to at least the 4th century AD. And then the hymn known as the Minor Doxology or the Lesser Doxology is the Gloria Patri, and its use in the church also dates back at least to the 4th century AD. And there are so many other doxologies. "Praise God from whom all blessings flow" is just one of them. It is one doxology among many. It is a doxology, but it is by no means the doxology. One other thing to note is the psalm of the day. Every Sunday and every feast day, every holy day that's that's a non-Sunday, something like Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, uh, there is always an appointed psalm for the day, which comes after the first reading, which is typically the Hebrew Bible reading, and is a commentary on or a reflection on that first reading. And I tried introducing the Psalm of the Day into the liturgy during Advent, the beginning of this church year, but I quickly removed it. But psalm singing is a vastly important part of our heritage and identity as Presbyterians. And I believe it's something that we just ought to be doing. It's something that we as Presbyterians never should have stopped doing, and I'm not sure why we did. Um, the Church of Scotland, as many of you know, did not produce a hymnary until 1899. Before that, Presbyterians sang the Psalms exclusively. And some Presbyterian denominations, such as the Free Church of Scotland, still sing the Psalms either exclusively or predominantly. This Sunday psalm will be a metrical one, that is, the text is rendered in meter so that it can be paired with a psalm tune or a hymn tune and sung in the same manner as a hymn is sung. In fact, our hymnal, being a Presbyterian hymnal, has a large section of metrical psalms in it for worship. And Sunday's psalm of the day comes from that section of our hymnal. On other Sundays, we may sing the psalm using plain song or another kind of chant, such as a Gelano or Presbyterian chant. And these are ways of singing the text of the psalm directly without paraphrasing it to make it rhyme and to make it fit to a hymn tune, like we have to do with the metrical psalms. Now, that is something that may not be familiar to you. Chant might be a scary word for you, apart from my attempt to introduce it this year during Advent. But it is something that we need to reconnect with. It's not something to be scared of. It's not hard. When we do incorporate chant, we would have a cantor, such as myself or someone else, singing the verses, and the congregation would be invited to join in on an antiphon, which is a refrain. So the words and the music would be the same every time, a recurring refrain. So it's not something to be scared of. If it's something you haven't done before, or something you haven't experienced before, well, then it's something new, and it can be something to open yourself up to, and as a new dimension in worship, not as something to shy away from or to be scared of. It's something that I think we really need to reconnect with, because psalm singing in all of its forms, whether you're metrical or plain song or Anglican chant or Presbyterian chant or Gelano Grail Psalms or gospel psalmody, this is something that's in our DNA, not just as Presbyterians, but as Christians. Psalm singing is in our DNA, and it's something we really need to reconnect with. One other thing to be aware of is singing during communion. We typically have only had instrumental music during communion, but for Lent, we're going to introduce 2 brief choruses from the Taizé community, which are Eat This Bread and Jesus Remember Me. You may already know one or both of those. These choruses are both brief, and they are both very easily memorized, and we're going to sing each one several times over, which you'll sing each one 2 or 3 times each Sunday during Lent. And so the goal is that by the end of this Lenten season, we will know both of these so well that people can sing them from the heart as they come forward to receive communion and as they return to their seats after communion. The Eucharist, even during Lent, is the joyful feast of the people of God. Remember that Sundays do not belong to Lent. Every Sunday is a celebration of the resurrection of Jesus, because Jesus rose from the dead on the first day of the week. That's why we call it the Lord's Day. That's why we call our our service of worship, our principal service of worship, the service for the Lord's Day, because the first day of the week is the day of the week that Jesus rose from the dead, and so it is a day of celebration. Lent is a season of fasting, but Sunday is never a day of fasting. Sunday is always a day of feasting. Sunday is always a day of celebration. And so the celebration of the Eucharist on the Lord's Day, even during Lent, is the joyful feast of the people of God. It is a meal with the risen Christ, a joyful meal with the risen Christ, even during Lent. And singing during the communion of the people can help us highlight, I think, the celebratory nature of the Eucharist. One thing you will notice on Sunday, remember when we did our discipleship pathway, and our last message in that series was about having a faith worth sharing. And I encourage you all to invite others to the various functions of the church, like our Mardi Gras party on Tuesday night, and to invite them to worship. During the season of Lent, since we do celebrate the Eucharist every Lord's Day during the season of Lent, we've got a special worship bulletin for Lent. You see it's large. I think a lot of people are going to appreciate the 15-point font in there. You may be able to read it even from just off the screen. The font, the print is so large. But you'll see also in the worship bulletin for Lent, we've got these sidebars, these purple sidebars that give sort of a play-by-play of all of the different parts of worship and explain why we do what we do during worship. So this will be, I hope, a great thing for our guests who have not worshiped with us before, or who have not worshiped in a liturgical church before. And you all may find some of these things helpful, even as a longtime worshiper. But maybe you've never explored why we do what we do in the liturgy. Well, these sidebars throughout will help with that. And there's a welcome letter from me on the inside front cover for all of our guests. So we hope this will make worship a much more guest-friendly experience. And along with that, we have a detailed worship guide, which is much more detailed than the sidebars in the worship bulletin. Now, this worship guide has been on our website ever since the website went up back in, August, September. This has been up there as a PDF that you could read online, or you could even print it if you wanted to. But we've made some hard copies available of this. They will be in the narthex right next to the stack of worship bulletins when you come in for worship on Sunday. So if you bring a guest with you to worship, make sure that they get one of these, and you may want to get one for yourself too. This is ours, and so we can print as many as we need. But it gives the brief. Well, there's another welcome letter from me. It gives the briefest of outlines of the 4 sections of the service: gathering, word, Eucharist, sending, on the first page. And then it goes through element by element within those sections: gathering, and here's opening sentences, gathering hymn, prayer of the day, confession and pardon, act of praise. And then we go to the word, prayer for illumination, first reading, psalm of the day, second reading. It just goes in order and describes in order what each of those things is. And then at the very end, on the inside back cover, is the outline of the service for the Lord's Day. This is taken directly from the Book of Common Worship and from the front of the hymnal. And it's just a way that guests can familiarize themselves with our worship. This is something they can take home with them. If they're like, I wonder why they did that thing, where he reached into the thing and got the water in his hands. I wonder why he did that. And so they can go back and look. And of course, it's got all our contact info on the back. It's got our address, our phone number, and our website, so that people can contact us for more info. So be sure, if you bring a guest with you, make sure they get one of these, in addition to the worship bulletin on Sunday. And we're going to keep this format for the worship bulletin throughout the season of Lent, to make Lent a time that is just ripe for inviting others to come experience the beauty of liturgical worship at Union Presbyterian Church. Thank you all, and I will see you on Sunday.